I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
I'm not the first person to be censored, I suppose.
At least it's not the 60s where you get censored with a bullet.
Yeah, I guess that is an upside.
Considering the day,
Good
you might guess what we're talking about by that little quip. Talking about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep. Dr. King.
Dr. King. Very, very, very influential man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how you feel about it, because here at the Backwards History Podcast, we are very impressed with the body of work of Dr. King. And we celebrate his
Achievement.
and his memory.
Even almost 60 years after his death.
Exactly. But the 60s seems to be a time of
Civil unrest.
and silencing those that threaten the status quo.
Oh, yes. The famous status quo.
And those with very little motive are the ones that were penned with the murders.
You think they've done a better job of picking, patsies, but,
I don't know. One was seen as a communist. The other one was seen as a white supremacist. They went decent when they picked patsies, but
Yeah, but
that's not the point of
that's
this.
not the point. You're
That's
right.
not the point. We're not here to talk about the assassinations. While we definitely will,
Today's more about a celebration of
about
life.
the body of work.
Mhm.
But before we get into that, I want to let you know that we do have an Instagram, a YouTube, a
Twitter,
and we want you to email us
please.
at the Backwards History Podcast at gmail.com. I don't care if it's criticism. I don't care if it's praise. I don't care if it's literally the email saying hi, like literally the letters H-I.
One word.
Send us an email, backwardshistorypodcast at gmail.com.
Mhm.
We welcome all correspondence with open arms.
Indeed we do.
And also, we want to say a big thank you to to Mike Ramsey Music
Mm-hmm.
for our intro and outro.
Good stuff.
Oh yeah, great stuff. Anyway, Kevin, give us a little background on Dr. King.
Dr. King. Growing up in school, we all hear about Dr. King, especially around this time of year. It's a day dedicated to his memory. A lot of people take work off. I always found it interesting that the state of Arizona was the last state to implement a federal holiday for Dr. King. People would rather have been prejudiced and take a day off from work. That's dedication right there. I think it was well after 10 years after it was deemed a holiday that they actually decided to, take a day off from work in honor of Dr. King.
Well, federal or not, a lot of places don't take off.
They don't.
Because most likely when you're listening to this, I'm on my way to work because I'm not off work.
Same. Yeah, most of you listening to this are probably on your way to work, as Will mentioned. But it's that little side note of, I'd rather go to work than honor a man's legacy. But Dr. King has to be in the top 3 of most influential people in the 20th century.
Most of you know him from his I Have a Dream speech.
That's the one. But I don't think a lot of people understand the content and the influence and the impact of that speech then and now. It's just something you heard growing up, something many of us had to memorize his speech or part of it as part of some kind of class assignment. But I can personally attest that going through public school, the importance of the speech was never quite explained or relayed to us in a manner where we could see, why am I learning about this? I know what it is, but how does that connect to me? Has that influenced the world and millions of people at the same time?
On a personal level, for me, as far as most classes that I was in taught, the I Have a Dream speech was usually just kind of cut down to I have a dream that one day my 4 children will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. And that was like the only portion that they focused on. But that speech is full of very, very powerful imagery, talking about, children of former slave owners sitting at a table with the children of former slaves, sharing a meal in brotherhood.
Right.
That's some strong imagery right there. And I never heard that until I was an adult, when I actually listened to the speech in its entirety.
Right. You listen to hear what he's saying. You're not hearing just to memorize, as most people had to in school. It's one of those things of, I learned it because they told me I had to, And I think that's where a lot of education falls short, because it's part of the curriculum. That's what we're going to learn today.
Dr. King was a very, very prolific individual in the civil rights movement, but he was very different from his counterparts at the time, like Malcolm X and a few others. Whereas Malcolm X was preaching, I don't have an issue with what Malcolm X was saying. His methods may have been a little bit aggressive,
a little harder to,
but he was saying, go out and get you a trade, learn a skill, whatever, which is never a bad piece of advice at all.
Always solid.
But Dr. King was out there. He was telling people, we need
to unify.
We need to live by the Constitution as it was written.
The nation's creed.
I'm sure several of you remember me saying in several episodes, quoting the Constitution, we hold these truths self-evident. All men are created equal. That should have been the beginning and the end of any question of whether any race was better than any other race. We hold these truths self-evident. All men are created equal. That's pretty self-explanatory.
As many things with the Constitution and other founding document, they seem concrete on paper, and then people tend to look at them and try to find
loopholes,
little leeways, and I think what he really meant, even though you can write it in what I would consider plain English, people always want to twist and turn things. But we'll try to get back on the Second Amendment there. But
not today, Kevin. Not today.
And I'm the one bringing it up.
I know. I'm usually the one bringing up the Second Amendment.
It's a little ironic,
right? Rubbing off on you, Kevin. Be careful.
I guess we're learning from each other now. Yes, Dr. King is really one of the few historic figures you can look at who practiced what he preached. He truly was nonviolent. He did not want to achieve his goals through fear, intimidation, violence. He truly believed in what he preached. And I think this really highlighted when I believe it was in 1957, while he's out giving a speech, his home is actually bombed. This isn't where they just drive by real quick and throw a brick through the window or something. No, they bombed his house with the intention of causing harm and death. Now, his family's not harmed, but the community at large is incited. They're furious. And this is the moment where, at least in my book, King solidifies his message of nonviolence, because he appeals to the community. I don't want you to retaliate, and it does two things. One, it shows that he really is a man of his word, and that his approach of passiveness and nonviolence is really what he's trying to do. And two, he's not going to be intimidated by fear. which anytime someone starts to challenge the status quo as it is, one of the first tactics is to try to scare them into silence, you know. You gotta think, these people went after this man's family in a very dangerous manner. Like they weren't playing.
He's a better man than me.
Same.
I would have definitely been loading up and looking for who just blew up my house.
I mean, that's most people would, but he understood, I think,
that all that would have done would have been to feed into exactly what they were trying to incite.
It would have completely destroyed his credibility and everything he worked for up to that point. Now, another tactic that was used back in the day is, well, let's discredit people, right? If we can't scare them into silence, you know, force them to stop talking, let's get people to stop listening, right?
Now, bear in mind that in this period of American history, there was at least one presidential candidate, mind you, that even ran on the platform of, I believe in segregation today, tomorrow, and for the future.
Oh, Lord.
Now, that was almost a very Nixon voice, but that was not Nixon. That was
George Wallace.
Out of California, I believe. Maybe wrong.
He's out of Alabama.
Well, I know that James Earl Ray supposedly went to California to help his campaign. Now, whether Wallace was out of California or not, I don't know. But if you don't know, James Earl Ray is the guy that was
allegedly
air quotes guilty of shooting air quotes Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee,
at the Lorraine Motel,
from a flop house across the street.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But yes, one of the tactics is someone's getting people to listen to them about changing things. Let's get them to stop listening, because he's not going to stop talking. This is done by, and this was I'm kind of ashamed to say, it's a really popular method back then, still today. Let's spy on them. Let's wiretap some phones. Let's see if we can dig up some dirt on this individual. And
back then it wasn't as easy as, hacking into their Alexa in their house.
or their smartphone.
Or their smartphone.
And a very famous American who spied on everybody, Hoover there.
Herbert, I dress like a woman in my free time, Hoover. Anyway.
There's a complicated figure from history.
We'll get to him in another episode.
But yeah, so once the violence and intimidation didn't work, let's go after the character of this man and let the community, get them to stop listening. Didn't work. They could never find anything on him. They would try to set him up all the time with loose women, I guess is the G-rated way to say it.
G-rated.
But he just would do it.
Air quotes, loose women.
But the man who gives you this speech, judged by the content of the character, truly lived by those words. His character couldn't be shook. It couldn't be tarnished, through violence, intimidation, and, trying to be discredited, trying to be tempted. One of the few people you can say lived up to what he asked others to do. And, through very difficult times, very trying times, relentless death threats, attempts on his life, attempts to harm his loved ones, arrested multiple times for stupid crimes, sitting at a counter only white folks supposed to sit at.
Otherwise known as sit-ins at the time.
Walking down the road. You're not supposed to be here.
Now, this was also an era in this country where regularly, most notable instances were in a town about 3 hours from where me and Kevin sit right now, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, Lord.
Where they would turn, fire hoses from fire trucks high pressure hoses
This is gonna
on
hurt
people
Right.
peacefully protesting. And this is no joke. This would like knock people off their feet. Grown men go flying from water pressure.
Not to mention
Take skin off bone.
and the German
up close.
shepherds were loose.
Yep, dogs were let loose. All kinds of stuff. Beat with nightsticks and everything else.
Thrown in jail, held sometimes days and weeks without any due process.
Constitutional rights violations.
Oh wow, that's a new one.
Right.
King rises to prominence with the Montgomery bus boycott. And what he did, very cleverly, at this time, we all know the story of Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat, and kind of sparks this whole endeavor. So cleverly, he goes after the money. So what he does, he gets a message out to all the folks. We're going to stop using the buses until they desegregate. So people committed.
Which, if you don't know, black people had to sit in the back of the bus.
Or stand up.
Or stand to let white people sit in the front of the bus or sit in a seat.
And that's how you get change. When people start losing money, they start paying attention. So they organize with all the people. And
all those people stop using the bus, then the bus system loses money. Bus system's more inclined to change their
policy.
And there's a win.
There's a win. And it doesn't seem like a big win if you just look back like, oh, they're going to let people, free access or equal access on the bus. But it starts something. King's put on the big stage now. People know who he is. And we start moving towards his I Have a Dream speech. Pretty
much was the pinnacle of his I wouldn't say political career, but
I've never seen him as a political figure.
No, his career as a social change advocate.
Activist,
I don't know what to call it.
Just call him an activist.
But the Million Man March was what it was. They marched on Washington in large groups and ended up having a large gathering at the reflecting pool at the Washington Monument, which is right in front of the statue of Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial, is where he gave his I Have a Dream speech. It's a very, very, very powerful speech. Even today, if you listen to it in its entirety, it's a very beautiful speech.
And it's similar to, I would say, the Gettysburg Address, in it's powerful, but it's not very long. It's one like, I'm here.
It's like 6 minutes long.
Right, I'm here to tell you something you need to hear, but I'm not gonna, drawn on about it. I'm not. The thing is, like, when 1 million people show up, you kind of don't have much choice but to listen.
Right.
They get there. He has his speech. And here we are, nearly 60 years later. And while it still remains a powerful speech, and even in the beginning of the speech, he notates how this is really going to change the course of history. And this is going to be that moment people look back on and like, oh, okay, that's when things really started to change.
However, unfortunately,
sadly,
in 1968,
April 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
April 4th, 1968, he was shot supposedly by a man by the name of James Earl Ray while at his hotel. There's some speculation as to the truth of that, actually most notably posed by Dr. King's wife herself, a Miss
Coretta Scott
King.
Well, yeah, she's an individual too, but
she had a hyphenated last name.
Did.
Now, even I know a lot of people are gonna roll your eyes when I say this name, but Judge Joe Brown, most notable for his Jerry Springer-esque civil court drama TV show, was actually a legitimate attorney or judge at the time of Dr. King.
Assassinated.
Sorry. Yeah, at the time of James Earl Ray's trial for the assassination. He would have been the last one to hear the case had James Earl Ray now passed. Now, he says that, and this is in a YouTube video that I watched. It was an interview with Judge Joe Brown, where he said that the flop house actually had large trees in front of the windows where the supposed shot was made from, that would have made the shot impossible. And they were subsequently cut down by the sanitation department
The next day,
the day of the investigation.
Now, the ironic part, besides there being trees blocking the view, King was in Memphis because the sanitation workers were on strike. He was there to lend support.
So, of course, sanitation workers go right back to work the next day to chop down that tree.
Even if there was an order sent into the sanitation department, that's an active crime scene.
You're not supposed to move or mess with anything in a crime scene.
You're over there cutting down trees and bushes and doing full-on landscape work at an active crime scene.
Judge Joe Brown speculates, and I'll admit I did no further research other than that interview as to this claim. Now there are other corroborating accounts of trees and bushes being trimmed and cut down during the investigation, but he claims that the shot actually came from a firefighter dormitory on that same street with a suppressed weapon with a different, and I don't know if our listeners understand this or not. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but a rifle is actually named a rifle because of what's called rifling, which is a groove in the barrel that makes the bullet spiral on its way out. The faster the twist of that spiral in the barrel determines how fast the bullet will spin when it comes out of the gun. Supposedly, the twist of the supposed rifle that James Earl Ray had does not match the ballistics of the round that was found in Dr. King, but that's neither here nor there. But supposedly, he was shot from somewhere else, which, funny, sounds a lot like someone else shot in the 60s that was attempting to affect the status quo.
Right. I mean, when you attempt to challenge power, those in power, they don't react very well.
Same guy was president during both assassinations as well. Oh, no, well, one was vice president during one assassination. We're talking about the assassination of JFK and MLK. Now, one thing that I saw that I found very, very, very interesting. There are pictures of Dr. King, JFK, and LBJ all hanging around each other in the White House in the 60s. You want to know who both were members of the Masons? I can confirm Lyndon B. Johnson and Martin Luther King Jr. were both Masons.
Coincidence? I'm not really a big believer in coincidence.
But our listeners know that already.
They do. In case you forgot, or you're new.
Now, we will dive into the Masons later in another episode.
Probably several times.
We're not ready for that yet. We keep hinting at it, but we're not ready for that one yet.
Secret societies and all
We
that.
just like to drop hints that there are Masons involved in almost every
major American event in history.
Yeah. But we won't poke at that bear just yet.
Yeah, because it tends to poke back.
Dr. King was a huge loss. Huge loss. Not just for the Black American community, but for America as a whole. Because we needed to be what Dr. King wanted us to be. We needed to be very, very strict upholders of the Constitution as it is written. All men are created equal. All men are created equal. It didn't say all men of a particular color. All men of whatever origin. Period. All men are created equal. The color of your skin is just as much your fault as what family you're born into. Same thing we separated from England for, because whatever family someone was born into determined whether they ruled over everybody or not.
Regardless of qualification.
Exactly. So you cannot be the change by holding on to the old.
Right. Well said. Well said.
But, as always, we're just two dudes with a microphone. We don't want you to take us as experts. We don't even want you to take anything we said as fact. We want you to do your own research, form your own opinions, and as always, trust but verify.